Welcome to Eviliv3, the live media commentary show that answers the question, is the best Chinese food in Detroit really in Canada? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we're going to review... my words are just blending together. Today we're going to review FX's Justified City Primeval, Season 1, Episode 5. You good? All right. Now look, we're going to be honest here. This is not the Justified that I thought we were going to get. The longer we get into this, the more I'm coming to terms with the realization that this is not the Raylan Givens that I'm familiar with. This is not the Justified I'm familiar with. But I'm trudging along because what they're giving us isn't bad. It's just not what I expected. That's it. I'm open to being pleasantly surprised by something I do not expect. That is something that I think we should all be open to in life. Generally, anyway, right? So this episode is a bit of a retread of story beats that have already taken place. As sort of an affirmation of previous story beats. So, for example, Raylan and Carolyn getting it on. We saw that coming from the first episode. Carolyn agreeing to work with Sweetie and the black book that the judge had in order to get her judge position. She was offered it an episode or two ago. The estrangement of Raylan's daughter and Raylan. We saw one tiny little scene of him texting her and her basically saying, "Don't want to talk, I'm good, peace out." And so ultimately it's Mansell talking with Sweetie and them using the black book, which was alluded to last episode. So there's literally nothing new that this episode particularly brought forward. It's just, sort of trending on fully realizing storylines that were dropped earlier, except for one pretty big deal. The whole purpose of this show is to deal with the death of the judge and the fact that Mansell, Clement, is sort of fingered for that, even though there's literally no evidence to prove that he did it. Now, because they don't have any evidence and the judge is still dead, the lieutenant governor, I'm not sure who it was. In fact, now that I'm looking at my notes, someone from the DA's office came down to the DPD and just bitched and moaned at everyone saying, "Why the hell hasn't this been solved yet? You guys are sitting on your ass for 5 episodes." He didn't say episodes, but you get my point. You've been sitting on this for forever. You don't have any leads. You have nothing. And so basically they have to take the case that this entire show is wrapped around and start from the very beginning. What that means is Raylan is going to look for the original detective that first tried to throw Mansell away, Clement, and Clement got off scot-free for killing those drug dealers. Now, ultimately, at the very end, he does have this sort of face-to-face with that police officer, but he's like, look, that detective, he's like, everything's in the file. There's no secret. There's no, anything about it. The evidence wasn't there and he got off. But what he does do is give us a foreshadowing, possibly, which would be a foreshadowing of a return to form for Raylan. And if we're closing this show out, this whole season out, with Raylan going from someone that we're not familiar with back to someone that we are familiar with, then that makes it all worthwhile to me. I love journeys. I love character story arcs. I love growth and development, but I also love me a little bit of backsliding. So if we get that, awesome. And the suggestion was that this detective almost got this criminal put away, but he couldn't get the evidence tied up tight enough, and the guy got off. The guy ends up coming to his house just to be jovial and nice and saying, "Hey, you know what? We can still be friends even though we're not on the same side of the law." And he goes to go get a drink, and the detective shoots him in his own home when he was reaching for like a bottle cap opener. So it was ultimately deemed that he was not liable for murder of this guy, even though he did in fact murder him in his home. It was put down as self-defense. And the detective was like, "Look, I couldn't get him legally. He came to my house friendly and I shot him, and I sleep like a baby every single night." Basically saying Sometimes you cannot catch criminals with our law and justice system. Sometimes you have to take law into your own hands. And that's something Raylan knows really well. So if the suggestion here is that Raylan will not be able to get Clement Mansell through the legal justice system, then he might get him another way. Because ultimately, Mansell is like sending Raylan flowers, just taunting him. Every time he sees him, he does the little finger shooter. Like he's straight up saying, you are on my mind. I want to get back at you for trying to put me in jail and not having the evidence you need, knowing that I'm not going to fold, or anyone I know is not going to fold on me. So that's Raylan's story. But we open with Raylan and Carolyn. Raylan wakes up. Of course, they were drinking Blanton's in Raylan's car at the end of the last episode. We wake up in Carolyn's bed, and she comes out of presumably the shower or her walk-in closet or whatever. She has a great house, by the way. And he is just sort of walking around doing his little stud thing. I really love Timothy Olyphant as an actor, but this dude is way too thin. He is not eating food. I don't know what it is. He is literally a skeleton. And what has always driven me crazy about skinny, like really, really skinny people is that because they have zero body fat, their muscles naturally show through their skin, and I've never met a skinny person who doesn't think they're ripped. But they're not ripped. They just don't have any body fat at all. It's not the same thing. They're still weak as shit. They can't do anything physically to you. They just look ripped because they're so goddamn skeleton thin. That's what Raylan looks like. He looks like a goddamn skeleton, and it actually bothers me, especially when you compare and contrast Carolyn, who is a thick black woman, with Raylan, who is a skeleton whitey ghost man. There's no way those two work in bed. There's no way. She would be complaining about his hip bones, and he probably wouldn't be complaining at all. Let's be fair. He's just enjoying the ride. But there's no way she's enjoying it. He's nothing but skeleton. It's literally like just bone on bone on bone. It's horrible. All right. That being said, Raylan goes out to get them coffee, and Jamal, Carolyn's ex, comes to the house and tries to do like a little bit of fronting for Raylan, like convinced that there's no way Carolyn's into this cracker. And they leave, and then ultimately Carolyn and Raylan go to dinner later on, and Jamal sort of follows them to this Chinese restaurant that Jamal and Carolyn used to go to after like prom, because they've been off and on together since like high school or something. So he's really into getting back with her, though he still hasn't left his Playboy ways behind. So he comes up and he's like straight up threatening Raylan. And you know Raylan, he's not going to back down from anyone. He stands up, he flashes his badge, and he's ready to go toes if he has to. He may not win the fight. And this is what I love about Raylan. He's willing to get smacked in the face if it means not backing down from someone that he just doesn't think has it. You know what I mean? Like he will definitely go toes with this dude. And then Carolyn is the one that's like, look, you two can sit here and fight. I'm leaving. So she pops smoke. They're ultimately sitting there like dumbstruck, like, damn it, I thought we were going to win her by one of us acting tough. But of course, that's not what girls are into, at least not girls with healthy egos are into. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about why this episode is called You Good, because it was a really interesting dialogue between Carolyn and Raylan about what you good means versus how are you doing. They both ostensibly mean the same thing, but the interpretation is dramatically different. She's going out there and saying, look, you good means you're imposing your will on me to answer you in the affirmative, saying, yes, I'm good. And if I'm not, then I'm going against your will. So it's you exercising your will over others versus how are you doing, where you're opening it up to how they want to interject and reply. So the onus is not on you, it is on them. And those are the two different approaches that Carolyn and Raylan take, not just with each other, but in general, with their professions, with their lives and everything. And I just thought that interesting verbal dynamic was something worth sort of highlighting a little bit, because it is different. It is dramatically different, and the intention is different. Now, Raylan tries to use it as this cute thing that he then continues to do to her because she digs him. And she, though annoyed, does in fact dig him. So she's sort of putting up with it and stuff. A little cheeky, but a little annoying too. It's Raylan. What are you going to do? And then Carolyn goes over to Jamal's to tell him that she paid off the lien that was on her house. And now she's completely freaking broke. And he almost seduces her until she sees his girlfriend's underwear and bag. And then she loses her mind and finally cuts the cord between them officially. I can't do this anymore. I need a grown-up. I need someone that can be relied upon and likes me for who I am and doesn't want to focus on them and their petty desires. And so she completely leaves him flat. That ultimately, now that she's completely broke, leads her to money problems, right? She needs to somehow get this judge position that she's always dreamed for in her profession. She doesn't schmooze with people very well, the governor or anyone else. That's just not really her style. And so the flaw in Carolyn is, the first thought she thinks of is, well, let me get that blackmail judge book and I'll get my judgeship some way, maybe not the right way. So she goes and finds Smiley and she talks to him and she's like, look, I'm in. Let me see the goddamn book. He shows her the book and he's like, look, don't go after anyone unless you tell us because that's our ATM and I don't want to double tap. So she agrees. They're like old school friends and stuff, criminal friends, but still friends nonetheless. And she's completely willing at this point to go against everything she's been talking about and living up until now, solely so that she can get that judge position and fully realize her professional dreams. We already talked about Raylan, how he was running around trying to figure out how the hell Mansell is even connected in any of this in any way. They can't figure it out. Why the hell would he? Was he killing the judge on behalf of someone else? Like, they're convinced that Mansell did it, which he did, but they can't figure out a motive because he had no motive. He was just reacting. And that was it. So they can't get him on that because there's no evidence for that, which is driving them insane. So they need the gun and or the judge's pocketbook. Either of those two pieces of evidence will put Mansell away if they're on his person. But right now, Sweeney has both. And now that his attorney's getting it, oh, sweet hell. I get so into talking about it that I don't pay attention to my computer and it completely shuts down. Sorry about that. So Sweetie's going to go down. He's going to take the rap for all of it if he doesn't get rid of those pieces of evidence. And now he can't use Carolyn to get him out of it or the sweetheart deal that she made for him in order to get out of it because he told her to fuck off and now she's in on it. So Sweetie is completely screwed. Raylan is never going to get the evidence he needs, so he's never going to be satisfied. We have 3 episodes left in order to wrap this whole baby up, and it's just not going to happen. I think ultimately what the very end of this episode did was give us a glimpse into what Raylan is going to ultimately do, and that is give in to his true nature and force a situation where Mansell pulls or draws on him, and then he's going to take him down because that's how Raylan rolls. That is his whole MO for everything. And I want to desperately see it really, really bad. Like, I got to see this. But what are you going to do? All right, so we, let's see. We talked about Raylan and Carolyn. We talked about Carolyn and Sweetie. We talked, so Mansell and Sweetie. Let's cover that because I didn't go over that. So they're talking in a cafe about what target they're going to sort of blackmail with this book. They land on a guy named Bert Dickey, who's played by David Cross, who is a fantastic comedian and actor. I really, really enjoy his performances. He plays a very straight, though at one time crooked businessman who did business with the judge, and now, of course, his name is in the book. So they go to shake him down. Hey, Chris, how you doing, man? They go to shake this guy down, and they start at like 30,000. They work their way down to 10, but Mansell's pissed. He doesn't want to settle for 10,000. He wants 50. Ultimately, they leave because Sweetie sort of forces Mansell to leave, but Mansell goes back that night and literally takes the dude's like famous painting that he was admiring when they were shaking him down. A really kind of silly situation, but it just goes to show that this is the type of character. This is the Oklahoma, what do they call him? Oklahoma Wildman. He don't give a fuck about anything. He's just, if it's in his instinct to do something, he will execute that instinct. And we've seen it thus far. We know it's in the mail. We know he's going to go for it. And so it just shocks me when those who he has worked with over years, like Sweetie, would not expect him to then do that. Of course he's going to do that. You know this guy. You've worked with him. You're criminals with him. What are you thinking? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. If you don't like it, stop working with him, you dumbass. But criminals are stupid. That's the whole point. So we have to watch Dumb and Dumber. It's, you know, I say it flippantly, but I'm actually enjoying watching it, even though they are straight up stupid. If they were smart, Sweetie would just turn in the evidence and pop smoke. Just get out of there. Not even worry about it anymore. Then they could deal with Mansell and he would go to prison and problem solved. But he won't, because he can't, because he's culpable and he's part of the problem. And it's going to, the only solution is Raylan gunning the wild man down. So all of this, I think, is just prelude. All of this is build up to the very first scene in the very first episode of the very first season of the original Justified film. When Raylan is facing off against a Miami drug dealer who draws on him, because he sort of instigates the draw, and he puts him down. And he says, well, it was justified. Hence the name of the show. He's going to do the exact same thing, and it's going to feel so good. It's going to be badass. What I can't wait to see, if that happens, is what Mansell says. He's got to have like a chambered one-liner. He's got to have something like, I didn't know you had it in you, or who would have thought, or I had you pegged. Like, just something to give a, deliver this one line to make everyone involved feel satisfied with that ending. But if that's not the ending, it's never going to end. It's the only possible ending. All right. Anyway, that's pretty much the entirety of the whole episode. And again, this wasn't very heavy on character development. It was a retreading. It was a sort of tying the knot on threads that had already been put in place before, which is why it felt a little bit hollow. And that's why I give it... Okay, well, this was way more than I was anticipating. I thought I had 3 chambered, not 4. I give it 3 evil eyes. I gave it 3 evil eyes because, again, nothing really developed that wasn't already in the mail. I want these episodes to feel fulfilling in and of themselves. While I enjoyed the development of Carolyn and Raylan's relationship, you clearly see it is not going anywhere simply because she has now signed her death note with Sweetie and that little black book so she can be a judge. Mansell didn't do literally anything except for take a picture, which, okay. And like Raylan is not like the one moment he had to be Raylan, he didn't step up. He didn't punch Jamal in the face when he could have. It just felt a little unsatisfying for me. So 3 evil eyes out of 5 possible evil eyes. What are you going to do? They all can't be winners. But I do enjoy watching this show. I love watching Oliphant in this role, and hope you guys do too. So let me know what you thought about this particular episode. As always, remember that evil spelled backwards is live, so get out there and be evil.